You're watching Taste the Victory.
The upcoming starter decks that are released alongside Booster Set 8 are without a doubt the best ones in the game yet that are an amazing entry point into competitive Digimon. Previously, we went over how to upgrade the Motomiya starter deck, and right now, Imperialdramon is predicted to be one of the absolute best decks in the entire format, and majority of it is coming from the starter deck. So let's see how we can upgrade this deck on a budget to still take over your locals. On screen, we see what is included with one copy of the starter deck when you pick it up. So let's go ahead and start upgrading it. Starting with the eggs, this is ironically probably the hardest part to upgrade on a budget. None of Blue's eggs are particularly generic, so its best ones are pretty up there, being Upamon and DemiVeemon. Since this is being a budget-friendly build, we won't exactly have enough jamming Digimon to take advantage of DemiVeemon. However, if you have the resources to, you can go 4 DemiV and then 4 of the jamming Veemon. Upamon is the next best generic egg, and it is really likely to go off even without you having source stripping in the deck. However, it is sitting at $8. This deck really appreciates the draw power that both of those eggs offer. So if you have the resources to, DemiV will probably be your best bet at a budget option with your jamming ExVeemon that we're going to add later. For now, we will keep 4 copies of the Minomon since at the very least lets us beat over some threats at 13,000 DP with our Imperialdramon and 14,000 with fighter mode. Moving on to our rookies. Paildramon is just a 4000 DP vanilla, so we'll go ahead and cut that down to 0. We also want to make up for lost search power missing from our eggs with searchers in our rookie lineup, so we will take out Kabuterimon since it is simply a blocker if you have a blue Digimon in play. It is encouraged that you get 2 copies of the starter deck so you can get a playset of the important cards in this deck like this Veemon Searcher that we're going to up to 4. This one lets us search top 3 to grab a Digimon with free in its type, and by the end of this upgrade, everything in this list is going to be a free type Digimon, so it'll always be likely to hit. We will cut down the Wormmon to 2 copies since this is similar to the Gatomon in the Motomiya starter deck that lets you DNA Digivolve even while passing turn. Separate from the Motomiya starter deck, however, is that we are mostly going to be DNA Digivolving into level 5s being Dino Beam and Paildramon. The reason that Gatomon is so good is because you are DNA Digivolving into a level 6 in the Motomiya deck, which is much harder to remove with the early tempo that Gatomon gets you. These unfortunately are level 5s, so they are pretty easy to get rid of, which is why you typically don't want to be sitting on them while passing turn. You want to get your value. However, Paildramon lets you biome deck something that could potentially answer it, and Dino Beamon lets you suspend something permanently for the turn when you DNA Digivolve, so the odds of them still sticking around are likely, and they do offer immediate value off of Digivolution, so Wormmon still offers utility, and we'll keep it at 2 at least. To fill up the rest of the rookies, we'll be adding more Veemon. Veemon is the name of the game. First will be the Veemon from Booster Set 8 that lets you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, and then you get to add 1 2-color blue card among them to your hand. So this does search your options that are in the starter deck like Megadeth and eventually like your Tamers. So that is a great search tool to be able to get those. Next up, we got the Veemon from X1 Classic Collection. It has the inheritable once per turn when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, gain 1 memory. This can help prevent you passing turns so you can keep swinging on your turn. This can help choke your opponent to 1 memory. This can synergize very well with a hidden potential discovered. There is a lot of utility to this Veemon, so we'll be running it at 4. And that will make up our rookie lineup of 14 rookies. Next, we'll move on to our champions. Included in the starter deck is the Stingmon level 4 that plays itself from security. While that is always a nice bonus and then it suspends one of your opponent's Digimon, keeping lethal away, we need to be aggressive with this deck and try to get to close to an OTK as we can, so we will cut that down to 0. Next, we'll be cutting down the ExVeemon down to 2, because while it doesn't do as much as Stingmon, it is still great to have that option to be able to play a champion for only 3 costs. Stingmon does the same thing, playing itself for 3 costs if you have a blue Digimon in play, but its inheritable has, when attacking, if you have a blue Digimon in play, draw 1, and keep in mind that is not once per turn, so it does synergize and draw twice with Paildramon's unsuspend and attack again ability. ExVeemon simply gives you plus 1000 DP, which doesn't hurt either in case you don't have jamming. In their place, we will put ExVeemon from Classic Collection. It has jamming, and its inheritable gives a Digimon with Imperialdramon in its name or free in its type jamming as well. So this is important to make sure you don't lose your Paildramon on its double swings too early, and then it lets you be aggressive early on too, with it being able to attack into security fairly safely, except for options. And lastly, for our champion lineup, we have Lighdramon, formerly known as Lighdramon in the English dub. It has Armor Purge, and then when Digivolving, suspend one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. One of the other best predicted decks in the meta is Motomiya, and its important card is Gatomon. It lets it search, it lets you Digivolve for cheap, it lets you DNA Digivolve even if you pass turn, and a lot of the times they will have to hard slam it to be able to search for their pieces. This lets you snipe that and stop them and set them very far back if you time your Lighdramon correctly. There's also another dual color mon to synergize with the Ken Davis we will add later to help us unsuspend and get more swings to check your opponent's security. Next up, we're going into our ultimate lineup. These are level 5s. Jewel Veemon is just a vanilla, so we will cut that down to 0. In its place, we will up Paildramon to 4 copies and Dino Beam down to 3. Paildramon is crucial to the strategy of this deck wanting to be aggressive and OTKing because it lets you DNA, putting a 6000 DP or less to the bottom of your opponent's deck, and a lot of Motomon's ultimates are 6000 DP or less, so that is a really crucial target to hit, and then when attacking, unsuspend this Digimon once per turn. So that's important because it lets you double draw with Sting, it lets you swing at your opponent's security and be aggressive and potentially OTK them. This is one of the most important cards in the deck. After that, we got Dino Beam, who says, when Digivolving, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, then if you DNA Digivolve, it cancels suspend to your opponent's next turn. So that is really useful to be able to stop lethal and also to make sure they don't swing back at your Dino Beam if you were not able to go into Paildramon and get rid of whatever it was this turn. It also has the inheritable. This Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for each of its colors, which could potentially make your Imperialdramon really big. While not as good as Paildramon, so you won't be going into it as often, it does have its utility, and it is searchable off of all of our searchers, so we do want to have it at 3, but not 4 to not clog our hand. For our Mega lineup, we have Grand Kuwagamon that is included in the starter deck. For a level 6, it has security attack plus 1, and when Digivolving, this Digimon gets plus 4000 DP for the turn. So 15k, 2 checks is definitely nice and not a bad option at all, but we want synergy with the rest of our bottom end, so we will cut this down to 0. In its place, we will up Imperialdramon Dragon Mode to 3 copies, and then we will put 2 copies of Fighter Mode. It digivolves from 2 from Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, so that's really good synergy. And then when attacking, if you have a blue card in Source, unsuspend one of your Digimon, and if you have a green card in Digivolution Sources, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. This can help stop lethal by clearing your opponent's board, or you can keep swinging at your opponent's security and potentially OTK, as we've been implying is the name of the game this entire profile. This is a super rare of potentially the best deck in the format, however, so if this does end up being too pricey, you can absolutely substitute those 2 Grand Kuwagamons from the starter deck in place of Imperialdramon Fighter Mode. It is still a good aggressive card. Included in the starter deck are 2 copies of Megadeth. This is a fantastic option and we will leave it at that. However, 3 if you want to cut down on one of the more expensive cards in the list is definitely a viable option to have more bombs in your security. For only 5 costs, this is really strong removal as a lot of stuff can't get around it unless it specifically prevents bounce to hand since it's non-destruction removal. Also included are 4 Flower Cannons and 4 Hell Masquerades. Flower Cannon is a reprint, and Hell Masquerade gives you plus 2000 DP, then if you have a blue Digimon in play, one of your Digimon gets piercing for the turn. Its security effect adds it to your hand. While they're nice options, they can be kind of cloggy, especially if Flower Cannon doesn't play into the rest of your strategy. You could potentially run a couple copies of Flower Cannon and then Nidhoggmon from Booster Set 4 as your backup Mega. Since Dino Beam also does suspend something for free when you DNA Digivolve, you could potentially clear a lot of the board that way. However, if you want to go focused on the OTK strategy, we'll cut both of these down to 0. And in their place, we will put 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered. This lets you Digivolve for free at only the cost of suspending one of your Digimon. This is too high value and gives you so much momentum that it was limited to 1. 3 copies of Ken Davis. If you have a blue Digimon in play at the start of your main phase, gain 1 memory, and if you have a green Digimon in play, gain 1 memory. So it's important to note that it says start of your main phase, so you can move out of the breeding area, and then you get a plus memory from that. So there's a lot of potential synergy there with all the dual color mons in our deck. And then your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a Digimon with 2 or more colors, you may suspend this tamer to unsuspend that Digimon. This contributes to our OTK strategy. There is just so much value in this one tamer that we gotta run it at 3. Our other tamer is going to be Mimi Tachikawa. She guarantees you 3 memory at the start of your turn, and then if you have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play, you may suspend this tamer to hatch 1 Digi-Egg card to an empty space in your breeding area, or move a level 3 or higher Digimon from your breeding area to your battle area. So this definitely helps the OTK strategy of the deck by being able to push out and get that extra swing if you have the Digimon already hatched in your breeding area. The tamer you will see in place of Mimi is typically Davis. However, it is currently sitting at $17 and we won't have a reprint until at least Booster Set 9, even though it has been announced. So while this is still $2 to $3 a pop for a tamer, it is a much cheaper alternative that still synergizes very well with the deck than Davis. And lastly, to round out our list, we will be including 2 copies of Blue Memory Boost. Blue Memory Boost lets you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and add 1 blue Digimon card among them to your hand and return the rest to the bottom of the deck. Since a lot of our Digimon are half blue and green, this is very likely to hit something when revealing the top 4, and then you can delay it later to gain 2 memory and pay for itself back almost. It's a great search tool that also lets you push for game by giving you just enough memory that you need to OTK later in the game. There's definitely an argument to be made for Hammer Spark if you have access to them in place of Blue Memory Boost. You would simply cut down 2 of the Blue Memory Boosts and then maybe a level 4 to fit in 3 to 4 Hammer Sparks. And that is your budget upgrade of the Imperialdramon starter deck. I also definitely want to make note that just getting 2 of the starter decks and just jamming them together to get 4 copies of all the big guys like the Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, Paildramon, that is also a very viable option to take to locals and do well with, because this deck just synergizes so well and has so much momentum. There's definitely many ways you could take Imperialdramon and build it, and that's the exciting part of this entire meta. So many of the decks are variable, and it's really cool to see everyone's unique flavors to them. We'll also be doing a full power deck list later on in the channel, so stay tuned for that. But hopefully this is a good entry point for new players into the game, and if there's any other tech options you think should be here instead, or that you'd like to suggest in addition to these, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you liked the video, and let me know anything I could do to improve in the next one. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.